Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought fast food would almost get me killed. It's a funny thing to say out loud now, and people usually laugh when I say it. But I'm not joking. For a while, I worked the overnight shift at a Wendy's-style fast food restaurant just off Highway 52 in rural Indiana. It was one of those old buildings, half forgotten by corporate and held together by duct tape and luck. The kind of place locals come when they're too drunk for Denny's, or just need something hot and cheap after midnight. My name's Mallory Jensen. Back then I was 26, going to school during the week and pulling weekend graveyard shifts to pay rent and chip away at student loans. On Fridays and Saturdays, it was just me and whatever prep cook they scheduled, usually a high schooler who'd clock out by 2 a.m., leaving me completely alone from 2 until close at 6. I'd worked there for 8 months, and I was used to the strange energy of the night shift. The parking lot raccoons were practically co-workers. Sometimes you'd get tweakers in the drive-thru, or sad drunks talking about their divorces over cold fries. Nothing really surprised me anymore, until one night. Everything changed. It was a Saturday in late October. Not Halloween, not even close to it. Just one of those nights when the air feels like something's shifting. A dry wind had rolled in around 11 p.m., making the sign out front creak like a swing set. It started like any other night. I was working with Riley, a 17-year-old who had one AirPod in the entire shift and talked mostly in grunts. By 1:50, the last of the fryers had been scrubbed, the floors mopped, and Riley had clocked out with a muttered later. By 2:15, I was officially alone. I locked the front doors and flipped the drive-thru sign to night menu. Then I settled in at the front counter with a bottle of Diet Coke and a laminated cleaning schedule I had no intention of following just yet. I was exhausted. I'd been up since 9 a.m. working on a group project for school, and my bones ached with that special kind of tired that makes your vision blur at the edges. I was just about to lean back and close my eyes for a moment when the doorbell chimed. Not the drive-thru speaker. The front door. Now, this place had an old-school buzzer system. Every time someone pulled the front door open, it let out a high-pitched ding loud enough to wake the dead. Only thing was, the doors were locked. I'd locked them myself, double-checked them after Riley left. The buzzer went off again. I stood up, heart beginning to tap at the inside of my chest, and walked slowly around the counter. The restaurant was empty. No one at the doors. No movement in the parking lot. I chalked it up to the wind. Maybe the door sensors were old and twitchy. After all, the register still thought we sold apple pies we hadn't stocked since 2022. I returned to my counter stool, a little unsettled, but still rational. I even laughed at myself. I was sleep-deprived. These things happen. But then, another ding. And this time, I saw the shadow. The shadow moved past the far side of the dining room windows. I jumped up again, rushed to the window, and looked out. There, across the street under a flickering street lamp, was a car I didn't recognize. Old, boxy, and parked half on the sidewalk like whoever owned it didn't care about tickets. It looked like it hadn't been washed in months. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture. I had no reason, just instinct. I zoomed in and noticed something. The driver's seat was reclined, and I could barely make out the silhouette of someone inside. I stood there watching, hoping maybe it was just a guy sleeping it off. But after 30 seconds of stillness, the shadow in the car sat up. He opened the car door, and he stared straight at me. I backed away from the window so fast I nearly tripped over a mop bucket. My breath came short and fast, my ears buzzing with adrenaline. I returned to the counter and sat down next to Gretchen, one of our regulars. Now, I should mention, Gretchen wasn't really a customer. She was a 78-year-old former nurse with late-stage dementia who wandered in from the assisted living place down the road at least once a week. Usually someone from the staff brought her home, but sometimes, like that night, she slipped past them. She'd walked in earlier around 11 o'clock, and I'd called her facility. They said someone would come get her shortly, which usually meant whenever we remember. She was sitting calmly with her coloring book and a cup of black coffee I didn't charge her for, humming a tune I couldn't place. I sat beside her, still shaken. She looked at me with those watery blue eyes and asked in a voice clear as day, "What did the man want, dearie?" It hit me like a punch. "What man?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She pointed vaguely toward the door. "The one who rang. He's been here before, hasn't he?" I wanted to ask her what she meant, but the drive-through speaker crackled to life. "Hey," a man's voice said. "You open?" Relieved, finally something normal, I turned toward the headset. "Yeah, we're open for drive-through. Go ahead with your order." No response. I waited. Nothing. "Hello?" I said. Silence. Then laughter. Low, male, choking with something dark in it. Then the speaker went dead. I went to the window. The car was still there. Then I noticed Russell, one of the night janitors from the gas station next door, slowly making his way across the lot toward the dumpsters. I banged on the window. He looked over. I motioned for him to come to the door. When he got close enough, I unlocked it just a crack. "Did you see that car?" I asked him. Russell nodded. "Yeah, been there a while. Weird dude in it, I think. I saw him walking behind your building a few minutes ago." I swallowed hard. "Can you stay with me for a bit?" Russell hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. I'll make a couple rounds around the lot, too." I locked the door behind him and turned back to the dining room. That's when I saw Charlie. Charlie was another one of my residents. Used to be a painter before the Alzheimer's. He wasn't supposed to be here. But there he was, slowly walking between the tables with a clean paintbrush, swiping it against the air like he was coating the walls in invisible color. "Charlie?" I asked, confused. He stopped, turned his head slightly. "Don't answer the door alone," he said. "He might hurt you." I froze. "Charlie," I said slowly, "why did you say that?" He smiled and shrugged. "The man told me." I didn't have time to ask anything else, because at that moment I saw movement near the side window. A man stepped out of the darkness and looked directly at me through the glass. His face was pale and hollow-eyed, jaw tight, lips cracked. He was dressed in a torn hoodie and jeans stained with something dark. We made direct eye contact. His expression didn't change. I screamed. He bolted. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher stayed on the line until the officers arrived, a pair of local cops I'd seen get coffee here a dozen times before. They swept the area, took my statement, and had a long conversation outside with Russell, who was now pacing near the dumpsters. After about 45 minutes, they came back inside. "There was a break-in at a house about 3 blocks from here," the older officer said. "Woman was assaulted by an intruder. Suspect ransacked her bathroom cabinet looking for narcotics. She's okay, shaken but alive." He paused. "Your building's alarm system and security locks probably saved your life." I didn't say anything. I just looked at Charlie, who was now humming softly and painting invisible flowers on the window. They never caught the guy, or if they did, I never heard. A few days later, the managers installed a better security system and more cameras, but they never agreed to put a second person on the night shift. I handed in my resignation a week after that. I couldn't shake the memory of that man's eyes, or how 2 people with severe dementia, people who had no idea what year it was, knew he was outside before I did. Coincidence? Maybe. But I still keep that photo of the car on my phone, just in case. And sometimes, when I drive past that old restaurant, I swear I feel someone watching me, from the shadows, from the night, from just beyond the locked doors. I never thought much about graveyard shifts. They paid more, came with less customer interaction, and let me avoid the endless chaos of daytime service. That was perfect for someone like me, quiet, observant, used to being alone. When I got hired at a 24-hour Wendy's located off Highway 211 in northern Arkansas, I didn't think it would be much different from any other fast food gig. But that place changed something in me. It broke whatever illusion I had that isolation meant safety. The Wendy's was one of those standalones at the edge of town, technically in Russell Hill, but far enough from the center that no one just wandered in. Our only neighbors were a rundown car wash, a gas station that closed at midnight, and a forested patch of nothing stretching for miles. It was the last stop before an empty 30-minute drive to the next city. I worked 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. The store was open 24/7, but we only served drive-through after 11 p.m. For those 8 hours, it was just me and the fryers. My manager, Carla, did inventory till midnight, then left me alone with the headset and the keys to the kingdom. Nothing ever happened until the night everything did. I'd been working there for 6 months. I was 25, living with my sister in a cramped duplex off Weller Street, and trying to stack some cash after leaving community college. My plan was simple: save money, go back to school, finish my degree in environmental science. The Wendy's job was a placeholder, just something to fill time and pay bills. I knew the late-night risks, odd customers, the occasional drunk. But this Wendy's wasn't in a dangerous part of town. It was just far. Too far. That made it perfect. Or so I thought. It was a Thursday. I remember because Carla was in a mood about her daughter's grades, and we spent 20 minutes talking about how middle schoolers today don't fear adults anymore. I laughed, told her she was sounding like someone's grandma. She told me to shut up and mop the floor. By midnight, she was gone, and I had the place to myself. I cleaned the grill, I restocked sauces, I wiped down every surface twice. I took my time because it was always dead between midnight and 2 a.m. The last customer had come through just before Carla left, a trucker who ordered 2 Baconators and a chocolate Frosty. Around 2:15 a.m., I was behind the counter eating some cold fries and messing around with my phone when I heard the headset ping. I flinched. It was dead quiet, and the sudden sound nearly made me drop my phone. "Hi, welcome to Wendy's. Go ahead whenever you're ready," I said, slipping back into my customer service voice. No answer. I waited 5 seconds. Nothing. "Hello?" Then I heard it. Heavy breathing, male, raspy. I froze. "Sir, are you—" A voice cut in, low and sharp. "Don't say anything, just open the back door." I thought it was a joke. I stood there looking around for a camera like I was on some kind of prank show. My fingers hovered near the switch to kill the drive-through mic. Then I heard it again. Closer this time, right in my ear through the headset. I said, "Open the fucking door. Now." I ripped off the headset and backed into the prep area. My heart was thudding, but I told myself it was a prank. Maybe one of the high school kids from day shift messing with me. Then something slammed against the back door. Hard. I jumped. Another slam. This one louder. I could see the steel door flex slightly with each hit. My legs moved before my brain did. I sprinted to the office, locked the door, and called Carla. No answer. Then I tried 911. The phone beeped. No signal. I cursed and yanked open the drawer under the desk. Pulling out the emergency company radio Carla said only worked in range. I pressed the button and tried to raise the gas station manager across the street. Nothing but static. And then, silence. No more banging, no breathing in the headset. Just silence. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Eventually, I unlocked the office door and tiptoed into the kitchen. Everything looked normal. My phone still had no signal. I made my way to the back door, still convinced it was some cruel prank. That's when I saw it. Blood, smears of it, on the handle, on the push bar, on the concrete just outside the tiny square window. I stumbled backward just as the knob jiggled. He was still out there. I turned to run, and froze. He was already inside. He must have come through the drive-through window. I'd left it cracked after wiping the counter. The man was tall, mid-30s, dirty white shirt soaked with blood, one shoe missing. He was bleeding from his arm, his leg, and a gash above his eyebrow. His hands were shaking, and one of them held a small black pistol. I couldn't move. "Get down," he said. Calm, too calm. I didn't obey fast enough. "Get down," he shouted this time, eyes wide. I dropped, hands up, knees on the greasy tile. He stepped closer. I remember the stink, sweat, metal, roadkill. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I need your phone, your wallet, keys. That's it." "Take it," I stammered. "Just take it, please." He moved quickly, took my phone from my pocket, my keys from the hook, my wallet from under the register. Then he saw the duct tape. It was on a shelf near the grill. We used it to seal open sauce boxes. He grabbed it and looked at me. "Hands, behind your back." I hesitated. "Don't make me do something I don't want to do," he warned. I obeyed. He tied my wrists first, too tight, then ankles. I could barely breathe. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. I need a ride. That's all. I'm not going to hurt you." And just like that, he was gone. I heard the jingling of my keys, the door opening, then the distant roar of my truck's engine, and then nothing. I laid there, shaking. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The duct tape wasn't great. It had started peeling at the corners, probably from grease. Eventually, I got one hand free, then the other. I crawled to the phone by the register. Still no signal. I finally used the old hard line in the manager's office. Dialed 911, got through. A female dispatcher answered. I tried to explain but broke down halfway. She told me help was on the way. The police came about 20 minutes later. 2 cruisers, guns drawn. They cleared the building, found nothing. An ambulance checked me out. No injuries, just bruising from the tape and severe shock. By noon the next day, detectives informed me the man had been caught in Hardlow, a town 40 miles east. He crashed my truck in a ditch outside a pawn shop and tried to run. A customer called it in after seeing him bleed all over the counter while trying to sell my phone. Turns out he'd escaped a transport van 3 days earlier. A violent offender. History of armed robbery, assault. He'd been on the run, barefoot, bleeding, desperate. They told me I was lucky, that he'd killed a gas station clerk in another town during his escape, that maybe he didn't shoot me because he was already injured, or maybe he'd just lost the will to kill. I don't know. I quit Wendy's a week later. Didn't even go back to get my last check. I had it mailed. I still work nights, but never alone. I don't play my DS anymore either. Can't stand the sound of those old games. Brings it all back. I went to therapy for a while. Still do sometimes. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd fought back, if he'd been more alert, if the gun had gone off by accident. But mostly I just think about how quiet it was, how the only sound before it all went to hell was the soft ping of a drive-through headset, and how, out there in the dark, off a lonely stretch of highway, there was no one around to hear me scream. Not a soul. I never liked taking night shifts, but bills don't care about your preferences. That's what I told myself every Friday night as I clocked in at the Wendy's off Route 15 just outside Jackson Ridge. It was one of those standalone locations that sat awkwardly in the middle of a half-abandoned shopping strip. Dollar General on one side, an empty laundromat on the other, and behind us, just a stretch of cracked pavement and overgrown brush that led into a fenced-off drainage canal. I had been working there for just over a year, mid-20s, single, recently moved into a basement apartment I could barely afford. Rent was killing me, so I took the overnight shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. That's what I kept telling myself, just for a few months, just until I could breathe. Wendy's technically closed to the public at midnight, but we still ran drive-through until 1 a.m. and had cleaning and stocking afterward. Most nights it was dead quiet past 12:30. That night, it was October 27th, a Friday. I remember because we'd just put up those cheap Halloween window clings, and someone had stuck googly eyes on the frosty machine. It started just like any other. Boring, quiet, freezing. That night, our skeleton crew included me, Lucas, the cook, Jazz, a high schooler who wiped down tables and prepped bags, and Monica, our overnight manager. Monica always stayed in the back office watching the monitors and doing inventory unless there was a problem. I usually manned the register, did headset for drive-through, and helped Lucas with bagging when it got busy. Lucas was in his early 30s, quiet, and kind of awkward. Jazz was sweet, but glued to her phone whenever she wasn't being watched. Security wasn't technically required for us, since the area had low crime according to corporate, but none of us liked how isolated it was out there. Behind the store was a long blacktop lot that used to be a delivery area, with a rusted fence that backed into a wooded ditch. No one ever went out there after dark. Not unless they absolutely had to. It was around 12:45 a.m. when the last car came through. I handed off their Frosties, smiled, and pulled off my headset. Jazz was wiping tables, earbuds in. Lucas was refilling the fryer oil. I poured myself a small coffee, mostly for warmth, and stepped outside the employee exit at the back of the store to grab my heavier jacket from my car. My car was parked just 20 feet from the back door. There were two dim orange lights out there, one above the door, the other on the far side of the lot, but they didn't do much. The lot was cracked, weedy, barely maintained. I always parked close and under the light just to feel safer. It was cold, not freezing, but enough that you could see your breath in the air. I stood at my car, sipped the coffee, leaned on the hood, and lit a cigarette. One of my last ones. I'd been trying to quit, but night shifts like these pulled me back in. As I stood there, I heard something. A soft ting, like metal brushing metal. I paused and looked toward the fence, barely visible in the darkness. My first thought was maybe a raccoon or stray cat. I knew they sometimes squeezed under the chain-link fence to scavenge trash from the ditch. I didn't think much of it. But then I heard it again. Ting. Jingle. Ting. And it wasn't coming from ground level. It sounded like it was higher up. I squinted toward the fence. It was about 10 yards off. Nothing. But the motion light above the door had gone off while I was standing still. So I waved my arm in a big circle to activate it. Click. The light buzzed and flickered on. And that's when I heard it. 3 sharp clinks, and then silence. I stood up straighter. "Hello?" I called out, unsure why I even said anything. It came out awkward, like I was trying not to sound scared. Nothing. I scanned the shadows. The light's reach didn't go all the way to the fence, but it illuminated enough to see that there weren't any animals. No movement. Just uneven grass and patches of broken concrete. Still, something felt wrong. My neck prickled. I took a slow step back toward the door. Then I heard the fence shake. Violently. Not like an animal. Like someone was grabbing it. I froze. Then I saw it. Movement. A shape. Tall, upright. On the opposite side of the fence. They were jerking at the chain-link links. Not just touching, pulling at it like they wanted to climb over. I turned and bolted back to the door. Coffee sloshed out of the cup as I fumbled with the handle. My fingers slipped once, then I yanked it open, darted inside, and slammed it shut behind me. I hit the lock. And then, the knob twisted. Hard. I hadn't even caught my breath yet. I could hear the click and scrape of the knob as someone on the other side tried to open it. I held the knob in place with both hands. It jerked again. And again. Then stopped. I radioed Monica. "Someone's out back, trying to come through the door." I swear to God there was a pause. Then Monica's voice crackled back through the headset. "You sure?" "Yes, they were right there. I saw them at the fence, then they ran at me or something. Tried the door." Within seconds, Monica came rushing to the back with Lucas trailing behind her. She looked pale. Lucas locked eyes with me. "You okay?" Yeah, I think so." I was still holding the knob. "They stopped, but someone tried to come in. I swear Monica frowned and went back to the office. A few minutes later, she called us in to show the security footage. We crowded around the small monitor, and I felt my blood run cold. It was just me outside. The footage showed me sipping coffee, smoking, then waving at the light, standing, calling out. But the fence? Empty. No shape, no movement, no one running at me. The door? The knob twisted and moved, violently, but I wasn't touching it. Look there, I pointed. That's when I was inside already. That door handle is moving. Lucas leaned closer. That's actually real? I told you. Monica replayed it. The fence gave a small shudder, barely visible, just before I bolted inside. Lucas muttered, "Could be the wind." There wasn't any wind, I snapped, angrier than I meant to be. Monica looked uncertain. "There's no entry breach on the fence, no alarms. I'll have it checked in the morning." The rest of the shift dragged. No one said anything. We didn't go near the back door again. We stayed up front, cleaned everything extra fast, kept the lobby lights on all night. Monica didn't say a word about it in her end-of-night report. When Lucas clocked out around 7:10 a.m., he stopped next to me as I zipped my hoodie. "I've been here 4 years," he said softly, "and I've never seen anything like that." "Yeah," I said. "Me either." He hesitated. "You know what's weird? There's something about that back lot, even in daylight. Like, someone's always out there watching. I've felt it, just never seen it." "You did?" I looked at him. "You think I imagined it?" "No." He shook his head. "I think you saw something we weren't supposed to see." I stopped smoking after that night. Switched to gum. Took my breaks in the lobby, or sometimes just cleaned something to keep busy. Every time someone had to take the trash out, we did it in pairs. And never after midnight. Corporate didn't care. Monica filed it under employee misunderstanding. Maintenance checked the fence. No cuts, no damage. But that footage? The one with the door handle moving on its own? Monica told me 2 days later that the file somehow corrupted during the backup. We never saw it again. I eventually transferred to a daytime shift at another location across town. I told myself it was for the hours, for the better pay. But really, it was to get away from that back lot, from the silence, from the shadows that didn't show up on camera. I still dream about it sometimes. The fence rattling, the doorknob twitching, and a shape I know was there, even if no one else ever saw it. I used to think night shifts were boring. That's how I start when people ask what happened. Because it's true. For the most part, they were. Nights at the Wendy's inside the Highway Travel Plaza were quiet, eerily so sometimes, but boring all the same, especially after the usual dinner rush of truckers and families passed and the dining area cleared out. My name's Jenna Clark. I was 26 when this happened, living in a small town called Jasper Hollow, Indiana. It wasn't even a real town, more of a truck stop community with a gas station, a motel, a convenience store, and the Wendy's where I worked 5, sometimes 6 nights a week. My rent was late half the time, and my old Toyota had more rust than paint. But I was doing my best. I'd been on night shift for over a year by then. My coworker Lacey and I would split duties. She'd take drive-through, and I'd work the counter, prep, and close the dining room. We had a little rhythm going. She was 20, always on her phone, barely looked up from TikTok, but sweet in a distant kind of way. I didn't mind working with her. We also had an off-duty state trooper, Deputy Carl Henson, who parked his cruiser on the lot most nights. He'd come in for coffee or a burger and just hang around, not doing much. It made us feel safer, knowing someone with a badge and a gun was a few feet away. October 18th, Wednesday night. That night started off like any other. Windy, leaves blowing across the parking lot, the smell of fryer grease clinging to my hoodie. Lacey was late, and I was already mopping the front when the last few customers left. Carl was parked near the fuel station, his headlights off. By 11:15 p.m., The place was dead. The kind of dead where the buzz of the soda machine becomes the loudest sound in the room. I was wiping down the counter when I heard the bell over the door. Ding. I looked up. He was just standing there. Tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, brown hair matted to his forehead, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans that clung like they were wet. At first I thought he'd spilled something, but when he stepped closer into the light I realized he was soaked in blood, head to toe. I froze. My mind didn't even register the red at first. It was too much, like he'd bathed in it. His shirt was clinging to his chest, red all over. His jeans looked like they'd been dragged through mud, only it wasn't mud. He looked at me blankly. "Do you got a sandwich for me?" he asked, voice flat like he was asking about the weather. I blinked. I'm sorry? "A sandwich," he said again, glancing at the menu board above my head, like a Baconator or something. For a second, I wondered if he was playing some messed up prank. Maybe it was Halloween early, but then I saw it. The blood dripping slowly from his left hand onto the tile. Drip, drip. He wasn't faking. He was hurt. Maybe dying. But something told me to keep calm. Stay steady. I could see it in his eyes, glassy, dazed, not high, not drunk, something worse. Shock. I swallowed hard and said the only thing I could think of. "Sure." "One Baconator, coming up." I kept my voice even. Inside, my heart was jackhammering. I turned and moved to the prep line, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the spatula. I glanced toward the back room and saw Lacey, finally clocked in, sitting on a stool scrolling through her phone with her earbuds in. I mouthed, "Help me." But she didn't look up. So I tried again. I walked toward the bin of shredded lettuce and pretended to check it. "Hey, Lacey?" I said, voice loud but casual. "We're almost out of lettuce. Can you go get some from the walk-in?" She finally glanced up, one earbud dangling. "Yeah, okay." "No, not this one," I said, making sure I was loud enough for the man to hear. "The extra bin in the back, the one in the cooler." She looked confused, but I gave her a hard look, eyes wide. Something must have clicked, because she stood up slowly and walked out of sight. She didn't come back for 2 minutes. Felt like a lifetime. The man was still standing at the counter, swaying slightly, watching me assemble the sandwich. I asked, "You okay, sir?" "You're bleeding." He blinked. "It's not mine," he said. I froze, mustard bottle hovering in midair. "What?" "I don't think it's mine," he mumbled. I didn't mean to. He rubbed his temple like he was trying to wake up from a dream. That's when I saw Carl, the trooper, step through the door. I almost wept. He didn't walk in like he was responding to anything urgent. He was casual, like it was just another coffee break. Smart. He must have seen the blood from the entrance. "Evening," he said, walking up slowly. "How's it going tonight?" The man didn't even turn around. I slid the sandwich across the counter. "Baconator for you, sir." He grabbed it with a trembling hand. His sleeve slipped, revealing a deep gash on his forearm. Fresh blood oozed down. Carl stepped closer. "You hurt, buddy?" The man turned slowly, looked Carl in the eye and suddenly stiffened. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. Carl didn't move fast. He didn't need to. He just shifted forward, 1 foot at a time, like he was approaching a wounded animal. "I bet you didn't," Carl said. "Why don't you sit down and we'll get you looked at?" The man started backing away. Then, quick as a spark, he turned toward the door. Carl grabbed his shoulder and spun him around just as he lunged. The sandwich hit the floor. Blood sprayed. There was a struggle, a brief flash of silver, something small like a pocket knife. But Carl had already disarmed him, tackled him, and forced him to the ground. Lacey screamed. I hadn't even noticed she'd come back. It was over in less than 10 seconds. The man was cuffed, panting hard, muttering the same thing over and over. "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." Later, police, paramedics, state investigators. I sat in the back room drinking cold coffee with my hand still shaking. Carl gave me the rundown after he'd called it in. The man had been stabbed, not fatally, but badly. But that wasn't the real story. He'd done the stabbing, killed a guy in a motel room off Highway 30, claimed the man had tried to rob him. But the scene told a different story. Blood on the walls, multiple stab wounds. It was personal, messy. And in the days of it all, high on adrenaline, maybe shock, he'd walked to his car, fueled up, and strolled into the Wendy's for a sandwich like nothing happened. He didn't even know how badly he was bleeding. He'd dissociated completely. I quit 2 weeks later. It wasn't immediate. I tried to stick it out. But every time the doorbell chimed, my heart jumped. Every time a man walked in with a hood up, I saw blood in my mind. They gave us a safety training seminar. Management handed out panic buttons the size of car keys. But it didn't help. Not really. I ended up moving out of Jasper Hollow the following spring. Got a job at a library in a bigger town. Day shift, safe shift. And even now, years later, every time I pass a Wendy's or hear the sizzle of bacon grease, I think of that man, the way he looked at the menu, the way he asked for a sandwich like he'd just come from church instead of a murder scene. And I still remember what he said, quiet and broken as they dragged him out of the store in cuffs. I didn't mean to. I don't care how easy the job looks, I told myself. Don't ever get dropped off somewhere without knowing where the hell you are. But at 17, that thought hadn't crossed my mind yet. I was still just a kid with calloused hands and a can-do attitude, trying to make money after school and on weekends. I worked a string of side jobs, flooring, drywall, auto repair, you name it. But mostly demolition. The work was straightforward and didn't require a license, which was good because I didn't have one. No car either. So I depended on Rick, my boss, to drive me to wherever he needed muscle. Rick was an okay guy. 40-something, always had a thermos of black coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other. He didn't micromanage. He'd drop me off at a work site with a list of things to tear out and come back later to check my progress. I was good at what I did and never gave him a reason to doubt me. That Saturday morning started like a dozen others, only this one didn't end the way it was supposed to. "You got enough water?" Rick asked as we pulled out of the Wendy's parking lot. It was barely 7 a.m. I was half asleep, squinting at the rising sun as we sped past the last gas station for miles. "Yeah, I filled that gallon jug before I left the house." He nodded. "Good. Ain't no utilities at the site." "Where is it again?" He waved a hand. "Couple hours northeast. Little town called Redstone. Don't worry, you'll know it when you see it." Except I didn't, because I didn't pay attention. We talked about cars the whole way there. His old Mustang project, my dream of saving up for a beat-up Civic. I didn't notice the turns or the mile markers, just desert, dirt roads, and more desert. By the time we pulled into the lot behind the boarded-up Wendy's, I couldn't see another building for miles. It looked abandoned. One-story brick, faded signage, weeds growing up through the drive-through lane, a shell of a restaurant with all the warmth of a mausoleum. "Here's your list," Rick said, handing me a folded sheet. "Tear out the booths, the counter, the kitchen line, and that old walk-in cooler. Don't worry about the roof or outside signage." He opened the back of his truck and I unloaded my tools. Pry bars, hammer, chisel, gloves, radio, water jug. "I'll be back by 6, he said, lighting another cigarette. "If I'm running late, Mike's crew will swing by." "All right. Don't go wandering off. Ain't much out here but sun and rattlesnakes." I smirked and gave him a mock salute. He chuckled and drove off in a trail of dust. The first few hours were routine. Dusty, sure, but not difficult. The booths came out clean. I hauled them out through the side door one by one, stacking the splintered frames and cracked vinyl under the awning. By noon, I was halfway through the counter and had stripped most of the tile off the front register area. My arms ached, but it was a good kind of sore. a satisfying kind of tired. I'd been chugging from my water jug every 30 minutes and had just enough left for the afternoon. The wind was dry but gentle. The sun peeked through the old drive-through overhang, and the smell of rust and dust clung to everything. The kind of quiet that made your ears ring. Not a bird, not a car. Just me and the breeze pushing grit through the broken drive-through window. Around 3 p.m., I tackled the kitchen. The flat-top grill was already half disassembled. I pulled it out with a dolly and unbolted the grease trap. The deep fryers were caked with brown sludge, but those didn't need to be removed yet. I just had to clear a path. The last thing on my list was the old walk-in cooler. It was a hulking metal box bolted into the back corner of the kitchen. No lights, no floor tiles, just cold air, like it remembered being useful. I stepped inside to double-check it was empty, just a few broken plastic bins and an old shelving unit. I noted the coolness again, weirdly out of place in a building with no power. But I was used to odd drafts in old buildings, so I brushed it off. I closed the heavy cooler door behind me and it clicked tighter than I wanted. My heart jumped, but when I pushed, it opened fine. Still, I didn't go back in. By 4:30 p.m., I was done, swept the floor, stacked tools by the front entrance, and sat on one of the undamaged booths outside under the awning. I took a final sip from the jug, bone dry. I waited and waited. 6 came and went. The sun dipped behind the western ridgeline, and shadows stretched like reaching hands across the parking lot. "Where the hell is he?" I muttered. The Wendy's sat in silence, like it had for years. I checked my cheap plastic watch. 6:41 p.m. No cell service, no payphone, no lights in any direction. I climbed up the side of the building using a maintenance ladder to the roof. The whole area looked like a wasteland. Miles and miles of dirt, scrub, and blacktop. A few scattered structures far off the highway, all dark. Back on the ground, I walked around the perimeter looking for anything. An old service shed, a gas line, a sign of life. Nothing. Just wind, dust, and the long moan of emptiness. The temperature dropped fast. Desert nights don't play around. By 8 p.m., I was shivering in my flannel. The batteries in my radio were dying. Static. Then silence. Then a faint warble of a song before it sputtered out completely. I sat in the booth outside, hugging myself for warmth. Then I heard it. Thunk. Something fell inside the building. I froze. It wasn't a small creak, not the sound of a pipe shifting. It sounded like something heavy dropped in the kitchen. "Rick," I called out. Nothing. I grabbed my pry bar and cautiously stepped inside. The building was pitch black now. Moonlight filtered faintly through broken ceiling tiles, giving everything a grainy, silvery look. I held my breath. The kitchen was empty, but then I heard whispering. Low, scratchy, like someone speaking underwater. It came from the cooler. I backed away, out into the dining room. Another thud. I couldn't take it. I rushed outside, cold or not, and ran to the back lot where I dropped my tools earlier. I waited there, pry bar clutched in both hands, knees trembling. "This isn't real," I kept whispering. "It's just your imagination. You're tired, dehydrated." But my skin told me otherwise. I could feel someone watching. At one point, I turned toward the road just in time to see something move behind the old menu board. A shape. A person? Animal? I didn't check. I just pressed myself against the Wendy's wall and tried to disappear into the shadows. By 11 p.m., I was certain something was inside with me. Through the front window, I saw a shadow move from the kitchen to the hallway that led to the restrooms. I jumped off the porch, tripped over a stack of scrap tile, and hit the ground hard. The wind picked up, blowing sand into my face. Then, light. Blinding light. I blinked hard, heart hammering. A flashlight. IAN. Rick. He stood over me, wearing a headlamp and holding a half-eaten granola bar. "You all right?" I almost cried. I sat up, hands shaking. "You were supposed to be here at 6. He looked guilty. "I thought Mike's crew was picking you up." Mike thought I was. We didn't realize until I talked to him around 9. I drove like hell after that. I didn't say anything. I was too relieved. He helped me up and brushed the dirt off my back. "You looked like you saw a ghost," he said as we got in his truck. I stared at the Wendy's as we pulled away. "Did you know anything about that place?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not much. Old franchise that shut down after a murder-suicide. Some employee went nuts. It's just rumors, though." I didn't answer. I just watched the place disappear in the rearview mirror. That night left a scar. I never worked solo again, not without a working flashlight, backup batteries, and double the water. I never went back to Redstone, and I never ever stepped inside another walk-in cooler unless someone else was nearby. Some nights I still hear the whispers, especially if it's windy, especially if I'm alone. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that shadow walking down the hallway. Not rushing, not creeping, just moving, like it lived there, like it was still waiting. I was 9 when it happened. Back then, I thought Wendy's was just a place where you went for fries, Frosties, and a kid's meal with a cheap toy. I never thought it would become the setting for the most terrifying night of my life. But the story doesn't start there. It starts with my mom and dad. My parents weren't the kind of people who hired babysitters. They trusted each other and their work friends more than any stranger. Both of them worked full-time and, for a short period in the early 2000s, they were both employed by a regional environmental research department in Colorado. Back then, the department shared its office space with multiple public service buildings inside a massive government-owned structure that had seen better decades: yellowing paint, old linoleum floors, and the ever-present hum of outdated light fixtures. That building was just a few streets down from a Wendy's. My dad worked in the air quality division and my mom specialized in water contamination. They'd sometimes pull late nights during state projects, crunching data or finalizing reports. Those were the nights they'd bring me along, usually on Fridays, picking me up from school, grabbing dinner at Wendy's, and then heading back to the office for a few hours. That Wendy's was like a second home for a while. I had my usual 6-piece nuggets, small fries, chocolate frosty, and the staff got to know me pretty well. Most were friendly. There was one man, though, who stood out. His name wasn't Tony, but that's what I'll call him. Tony worked night security for the building, not the Wendy's. But because Wendy's was right across the street and open late, he spent a lot of time there grabbing food or chatting with the staff. The first few times I saw him, he was just another grown-up with a badge and a heavy flashlight. He had one of those deep, calm voices that made people instinctively listen when he talked. He wore cologne, chewed gum all the time, and always smiled a little too wide. And he really liked talking to me. "Hey, sport," he'd say, crouching down to my level. "What's the password tonight?" he joked one Friday, pretending to block the Wendy's entrance. I laughed and made up some silly phrase. He smiled and let me by. To a kid, he seemed harmless. Cool, even. My mom thought he was respectful and helpful. My dad, I don't think he ever liked the guy much, but he never said anything. One night, it was pouring rain. The kind of cold, needle-sharp rain that feels like it's coming sideways. My parents grabbed food from Wendy's to go and brought me inside their office. I was sitting in the break room with my food, legs swinging under the chair, watching cartoons on a tiny TV. Tony came in around 9:30 p.m., already doing his rounds. He waved at my parents, then turned to me. "Hey buddy, got your nuggets?" "Yeah. Want to come see something cool?" I looked to my mom. She looked up from her files, distracted. "Don't go far," she said. "Stay with Tony." I got up, grabbed my Frosty, and followed him out. That was the last normal moment of that night. Tony led me down the hallway toward the east stairwell. His flashlight beam bounced along the walls as we passed by dark offices and humming vending machines. I remember thinking the building felt so different at night, emptier, quieter, and somehow wrong. We reached the basement stairwell. "Want to help me do the lower levels?" Tony asked. I thought my parents said not to go far. He chuckled. Come on, it'll just take a few minutes. I used to be a kid too, you know. I know where all the cool places are in this old dump. Reluctantly, I followed. The stairs echoed as we descended. At the bottom, we passed through a heavy metal door and into the dim, musty basement. This area wasn't open to the public, just maintenance rooms, old archives, janitorial storage. It smelled like dust and old coffee filters. He walked ahead, flipping switches and illuminating one long corridor at a time. Ever seen a boiler room? He asked. No. Well, now's your lucky day. We entered a small room with two massive groaning machines. Pipes ran along the ceiling like metal veins. He explained what they were for, at least I think he did, but my memory's fuzzy there. Then his tone changed. Hey, want to play a game? I shrugged. Okay. He smiled and reached into his pocket, pulled out a piece of paper, folded it quickly into a plane, and threw it down the hallway. Go get it, he said. Then you throw it back. I laughed and ran after it. It had landed near a janitor's closet. Then, click. The lights shut off. The sound of the switch was unmistakable, and so was the echoing clunk of a door slamming shut behind me. I turned around, disoriented. Tony? Silence. Tony. Nothing. The hallway was pitch black. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I panicked. I tried to retrace my steps, but the hallway felt longer. I tripped over something. I dropped my Frosty. I screamed his name again and again until my throat burned. At some point, I started banging on doors, any door. I didn't know where I was or which way led back. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I heard footsteps. Faint, distant, then gone. I curled up in the corner of the hallway, shivering. Meanwhile, upstairs, my mom noticed it had been too long. She got up and checked the break room. Empty. She asked my dad. He thought I had just gone to the bathroom or something. 15 minutes passed, 30. Now they were both looking. By 10:30, they were in full panic mode. My mom stormed down to the lobby and saw Tony at the reception desk, calmly sipping a soda. Where's my son? She demanded. Tony blinked. He was just with me. Must have wandered off. I told him to wait by the elevators. What the hell do you mean, wandered off? My dad was right behind her, eyes like thunderclouds. They searched the building, calling my name, checking every office, every hallway. Nothing. Eventually, my mom thought to check the basement. She and my dad grabbed the master key set from the supply closet and ran down. They were yelling my name when I finally heard something. A voice. My mom's voice. I bolted down the hallway and slammed my fists against the door I'd last seen light through. They opened it. My mom scooped me up, sobbing. My dad turned to Tony and said something I didn't hear, but his fists were clenched. Tony said I had slipped away while he was showing me something cool. They didn't buy it. Tony was reported the next day, fired by the end of the week. That wasn't the end of it. About 2 months later, police came to our house. They had questions, mostly for my dad, since he'd worked in data storage. Turns out Tony hadn't just been weird. He'd been involved in a small crime ring smuggling outdated government computers and selling them for parts, and more worryingly, the data on them. They couldn't prove what his intentions were that night. Maybe he meant to come back for me once everyone had gone. Maybe I was a distraction, or worse, part of something he didn't get to finish. I still don't know. All I know is that I never stepped foot in that Wendy's again. And I never saw Tony after that night. People think horror is ghosts, demons, haunted dolls. But sometimes it's just a kid, alone in a basement, trying to make sense of why someone who used to make paper planes is now turning out the lights and locking doors. Sometimes horror is quiet. It wears a uniform. It smiles wide. It smells like cologne and chews gum. And it starts with, "Hey, sport, got your nuggets?" I was 21 when it happened, early 20s and eager to prove myself. It was 2021, peak COVID uncertainty. Jobs were scarce, people were cautious, and tension hung over every interaction like humidity before a storm. When I landed a position at a Wendy's just off the highway in a quiet Florida town called Brookwell, I didn't care that it was just fast food. It was my first job, my first paycheck, my first uniform. I lived with my older sister Cassie back then. She had 2 jobs and barely slept, but she let me crash on her couch after my ex kicked me out mid-lockdown. We were surviving, not thriving, but just enough to not feel like everything was falling apart. Brookwell wasn't big, just a few strip malls, some aging neighborhoods, a rundown movie theater, and a string of fast food joints clustered around the main exit. Our Wendy's was one of the cleaner spots, with a modest parking lot and a huge window at the front where I worked drive-through and front register depending on the shift. We closed at 10 p.m. every night, and I usually worked 3 to close. My manager, Mel, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who never smiled but ran a tight ship. I liked that. Things made sense under her. Most nights it was just me, a line cook named Ray. He was 20 and quiet but sweet, and maybe another part-timer who'd leave early. I didn't mind the quiet. I liked closing. Something about cleaning the lobby with music in my earbuds while the fryers hissed in the background felt peaceful. This story happened during one of my last few shifts. I think about it more than I should, even now. It was a Thursday, one of those warm February evenings that makes Florida winters feel fake. I clocked in at 2:57 p.m. sharp, same as always, pulled my hair into a tight bun, and tied on my apron. My coworker Andrea was finishing her shift and looked like she couldn't get out fast enough. She gave me a tired wave and mumbled something about a rude phone call. Some lady was real pissy about the new bacon maple chicken thing not being available for takeout, she said. Kept going in circles like I was lying or something. Good luck with that one if she shows. I chuckled and didn't think much of it. It wasn't the first time someone got weird about a menu item. We'd just added that sandwich and it was dine-in only because of how messy it got in the box. Head office rules. The evening moved slow. Few customers, mostly regulars. At around 4:10 p.m., an old tan Ford pulled into the lot and parked at a weird angle across 2 spaces. I glanced up and saw 3 people step out, 2 men and a woman. All looked mid to late 30s. The woman was tall, wearing sunglasses even though it was already cloudy, with long, dyed blonde hair and heavy makeup that looked melted from the humidity. The guys looked like they'd just walked out of a pawn shop. Jeans, boots, stained shirts, and too many rings. The woman led them in, scanning the room like she owned it. Her eyes landed on me and she smiled. Too sweet. "You the one I spoke to about the sandwich?" she asked as she approached the counter. I gave a polite nod. "Yeah, that was probably me. You still want to dine in?" "Yeah, since you guys won't let me take it out," she said, rolling her eyes. But then, almost immediately, her tone shifted. "No big deal. You're just doing your job, sweetie." She ordered 2 of the maple bacons, a regular chicken sandwich, and 3 drinks. I noticed a red binder tucked under her arm with a black pen clipped to it. Weird for fast food, but I assumed maybe she was a realtor or something. Lots of folks down here looking for property lately. After they sat down in one of the booths near the window, I went back to help Ray prep their order. "She's got a weird vibe," I told him, like trying too hard to be nice. Ray shrugged. "People are always extra when they know they were rude before, probably embarrassed." Maybe, but something about her felt rehearsed. When I brought the tray to their table, the woman smiled wide. "You live around here?" she asked casually. I paused, unsure if I should answer. "Yeah, sort of. Why?" "We're actually looking to expand a business in this area," she said, glancing at the man across from her, who was now scribbling something in the binder. "Ever think about doing something else besides this place?" I gave a practiced laugh. "I'm good where I'm at. First job. Trying to get on my feet." She leaned forward, her perfume sharp. "We run a private cleaning company. Small, discreet, real high-end clients. I love hiring girls like you. Pretty. polite, good energy. The word discreet stuck in my throat. Before I could respond, one of the men spoke for the first time. You'd make 30,000 in no time. Most girls don't even have to do half the work. I forced a smile, heart suddenly thudding faster. I appreciate it, but I'm not really looking for anything new right now. She didn't drop it. It's not even hard work, just showing up and being presentable. You wouldn't have to clean, really. And we've got a van that picks up our girls, so you don't need to worry about rides. No, really, I'm good, I said, stepping back slightly. Thanks, though. Least you can do is check out a picture of the van. It's in my car. She pointed toward the lot. I've got my phone right here. Just want to show you real quick. She was holding her phone already. It didn't make sense. I took another step back, trying not to show my discomfort. I'm on shift. I should get back to the front. The guy next to her chuckled under his breath. It wasn't friendly. I retreated to the counter and didn't go back unless I absolutely had to. At 5 p.m., they finally left. As they passed by the front window, the woman looked back and waved. Ray came out from the kitchen. Everything okay? I told him, downplaying it a little. Some weird offer, like a cleaning job, but it didn't sound right. He laughed, shrugged. Hey, 30 grand's 30 grand. Shut up, I said, punching his arm lightly, trying to laugh it off. But inside, my stomach felt wrong. That night, his grandma came to pick us up, like always. She was a quiet, sweet woman who didn't say much until I told her about the maid service. Her face drained of color. She pulled over on the side of the road and turned to face me. That wasn't a cleaning service, she said. That was a trafficker. That's exactly how they talk. Pretty girls, easy work, no need for a car. Just come see the van. Honey, you were this close. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my skin had gone cold all over. My hands trembled. All the times I'd brushed it off, laughed with Ray, shrugged it off, came flooding back like acid in my throat. I had almost walked toward that car. The next day I tried to move on. Told myself I was overreacting, that they were probably just sleazy salespeople or some MLM garbage. But then something happened that shoved it all back into the spotlight. Around 11:30 a.m., just before lunch rush, a man walked in. Alone. Late 40s maybe. Bald, clean-shaven, button-up shirt tucked in too neatly. He carried a red binder and a black pen. My blood went cold. He ordered a black coffee. Sat at the booth near the front. Didn't pull out a phone, didn't need anything else, just sat there, watching, scribbling occasionally. I tried to stay calm. Ray was in the back prepping fries. I went to refill the napkin dispensers, trying not to glance up, but I felt his eyes on me. The few times I did catch a look, he didn't smile, didn't flinch, just watched. After nearly 2 hours, I finally heard him speak, on a phone call. He was talking low, but I was nearby. Yeah, I moved it. Should cover that by tonight. No, the girls are still lined up. I'll send their cuts. We need another place down here, closer to the water. My heart thundered in my ears. I turned and walked to the back, nearly running. Ray, I hissed. The guy out front. He's with them. The binder, the pen, the watching. He's with them. Ray glanced at the front window and nodded slowly. I'll help you deliver these trays. Just stay close. We did. After 10 minutes of hovering near his table, pretending to clean, he gathered his binder and left. I never saw him again. I gave my 2 weeks the following day. Mel didn't ask why. Maybe she knew. Maybe she'd seen it before. I still don't know if I should have called the cops or reported it somewhere. I wish I had, but at the time, I was just scared. Grateful I hadn't followed her. Grateful Ray was with me. Grateful that my gut finally screamed loud enough for me to listen. Now, years later, I still check behind me when I close up. I still watch the parking lot before getting in my car. And I still think about that woman's voice, dripping fake sugar as she said, "You'd be perfect. Number I wasn't, and thank God I never found out what that meant. Idle hands, they say, are the devil's playground. It was exactly 3 months after Cassie started working at the Wendy's off Highway 92 in the small town of Elridge, Georgia. She remembered that because the job wasn't supposed to last. She took it to make some quick money while figuring out what came next. Maybe college, maybe moving out of her aunt's house, maybe just something better than fast food and aching feet. Friday nights were busy, but that night had been oddly quiet. Maybe the storm warning kept people home. The rain had come and gone by 6 p.m., leaving behind damp sidewalks and the soft hiss of tires on wet asphalt. She actually liked working nights. Less rush, less pressure, and less small talk with coworkers. Cassie was never much for conversation, at least not with people she didn't trust. It was around 8:45 p.m. when the man walked in. At first glance, he didn't stand out. Mid to late 20s, gray hoodie, jeans, average height, unkempt beard. The kind of guy who looked like he could be coming in after a shift at the mechanic's shop, or just as easily someone killing time. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his hoodie, and he looked around the place as if he hadn't decided yet whether to order anything. Cassie was working the front register. She offered the usual, "Hey there, welcome to Wendy's. Ready to order?" The man didn't speak right away. He stared at the menu board behind her, then back at her. His eyes were a little too still, not wide or aggressive, just off. He finally stepped up to the counter. "Yeah," he muttered. "What's the cheapest thing you got?" She tried to smile politely. "You can do a 4-for-4 meal, junior cheeseburger, nuggets, fries, drink." He gave a slow nod and reached into his back pocket, pulling out a worn leather wallet. "You work here long?" he asked as he fumbled with a few crumpled bills. "Few months," Cassie said, carefully avoiding eye contact now. "You like it?" "It's all right." She started putting the order in. He handed her a $5 bill, then said, "You look like someone who'd be doing more than this." Cassie gave a short, polite laugh. "A lot of us do." The man stared at her again, eyes dragging across her name tag. "Cassie, pretty name." She nodded once and turned to grab the drink cup. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up like tiny needles. It was a harmless comment, on paper, but something about the way he said it, quiet and intentional, didn't feel harmless. She handed him his change and the receipt. "It'll be ready in just a minute." He moved to the side to wait, standing near the napkin station instead of sitting at any of the empty tables. Cassie felt him watching her as she moved between the register and the kitchen window. Her co-worker Devin, who was back on sandwich prep, leaned through the window and whispered, "That guy's creeping hard." "You noticed too?" she muttered. Devin nodded. "You want me to hand him the food instead?" Cassie shook her head. "Nah, it's fine, I'll just be quick." The man took his food and didn't say thank you. He walked toward the door but didn't leave. He lingered near the soda fountain, slowly filling his cup, staring out the window as the parking lot lights flickered with moths. Then he sat down. Cassie noticed because he chose a table directly facing the counter, even though the rest of the dining room was wide open. He ate slowly, painfully slowly. Every time she glanced up, he was looking at her. Not always directly, sometimes just from the side of his eyes, or while sipping from the cup like he wasn't. 10 minutes. 15. 20. He wasn't even halfway through his food. By 9:25, Devin was the one who said something first. "You want me to say something? I mean, dude hasn't stopped looking at you." "I'll be fine. He'll probably leave soon." "You say that now. Just don't go out to your car alone." Cassie tried to act unfazed, but she was growing uneasy. Her shift ended at 10. She kept checking the clock, then back at the man, who by now had stopped eating entirely. He was just sitting there, twirling a fry between his fingers. At 9:58, she went to the back to clock out. Her keys were in her bag in the break room, and she made sure her pepper spray was still clipped to the side of her lanyard. When she returned to the front, the man was gone. Cassie's stomach unclenched slightly. She turned to Devin, who was wiping down the counter. "He finally left?" "About 5 minutes ago," Devin said. Didn't say anything, just walked out. Cassie exhaled and grabbed her bag. "All right, I'm heading out." "You want me to watch from the door, just in case?" Cassie almost said no, but something in her gut told her to nod. "Yeah, I'd appreciate that." She pushed the door open, stepping into the humid night air. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just her car under the second light post, dimly lit, casting long shadows. She made it about halfway across the lot before she saw it. A shadow shift behind the dumpster. A figure, standing, watching. Cassie's heart jumped into her throat. She turned fast, retracing her steps toward the door, but the figure stepped out. It was him. The same gray hoodie, same beard. His hands were down at his sides now, clenched into fists. "Hey," he called out, voice loud in the stillness. "You got a minute?" "No," she said firmly, backing up. "I'm off the clock." He stepped closer. "Just want to talk. You seem like someone who'd understand me." Cassie didn't answer. Her hand found her pepper spray and gripped it tight. Devin burst out the doors behind her just then. "Yo, man," he called out. "Back off." The man froze for a second, then scoffed, turning on his heel and walking off across the lot. No car, no ride. He just disappeared into the dark behind the buildings. Cassie's hands were shaking as she unlocked her car. She didn't sleep well that night. Over the next few days, she tried to convince herself it was just a weird guy. Creepy, sure, but maybe harmless. She didn't tell her aunt. What would she say? That a stranger stared at her too long? Then the phone calls started. They came in blocked. No caller ID. The first time she answered, it was just breathing. The second time, the same. The third, a voice whispered, "You're always smiling. I like that." She blocked every unknown number. It didn't stop. At work, she was constantly looking over her shoulder. She asked the manager if the cameras kept outside footage. They didn't. She started parking right in front of the door, under the light. 2 weeks passed. Then one night, she came out to her car and found something tucked under her windshield wiper. A note. On lined paper, torn from a notebook. 4 words, written in black ink. "You can't avoid me." She showed the police. They took the report seriously. A patrol car even started making rounds during her closing shifts. But there was no proof of who had done it. Then it stopped. No more notes. No more calls. Cassie thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. Until last week. She was off work, finally had a weekend to herself, and went to the local Home Max to look at some power tools for her aunt's shed. It was Friday night, same as before. The store was quiet. She was halfway down the power tools aisle when she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. She turned. It was him. Same gray hoodie, same beard, different city, different store, but the same man. He didn't say anything at first, just smiled. "You thought you could forget me?" he asked softly. Cassie didn't speak. Her mouth went dry. "I miss that smile," he added. "You shouldn't have run last time." She backed away. He stepped forward. Then, loudly, she yelled, "I don't know you, stay away from me." It echoed through the aisles. Other customers turned. A worker rushed over. The man froze, caught off guard, and then bolted. Cassie trembled all over. The police came. A full report was filed. This time, they reviewed the footage and took her seriously. There was now an official investigation. That was 4 days ago. Cassie hasn't returned to work since. She's staying with a friend out of town. Her aunt helped her set up a security system, and she's waiting to hear back from the detective assigned to her case. She still jumps at every knock, every buzz of her phone, every person walking a little too close. Because some men don't just ask for your number. Some don't just ask for money. Some ask for you in pieces, 1 minute at a time. And sometimes they don't stop asking, even after you say no. I never imagined I'd be scared to eat a cold burger in my own car. But that night changed everything. Back in 2013, I was 23, desperate for both money and a future. I was finishing up my degree in social work, and to move forward, I needed to land an internship. Problem was, the internship market was dry and competitive, and most unpaid. I couldn't afford unpaid. My fiancée Taylor and I were barely scraping by. So I took whatever paid work I could get to keep food on the table. A family friend of Taylor's, Ron, owned a private transport service. He ran a fleet of modified vans and small buses for wheelchair users or elderly clients needing non-emergency medical transport. Nothing fancy, but he needed someone for the night shift. The hours were brutal, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., but I was a night owl anyway. I got the commercial license, passed the CPR class, and signed up. Most nights were boring. I'd drive someone from a care home to a hospital or a family member's house and back. Occasionally, I'd have to strap a chair onto the hydraulic lift and secure someone in the back, but otherwise, it was mostly waiting. The van had a small heater, reclining driver's seat, and a radio. When there were no calls, I was free to wait anywhere within a 10-mile radius. At first, I parked at a 24-hour gas station just off Interstate 71, outside a small Ohio suburb called Meriden. It shared a parking lot with an old Wendy's, the kind built in the late 80s, dark red bricks, a dim yellow sign buzzing like a fly, and blinds always half shut. The Wendy's had a few regulars, truckers who knew the staff, shift workers grabbing meals to go, and occasionally, people who didn't look like they were there for food. Connected to the Wendy's, on its backside, was a small rundown motel. Just 10 rooms, probably hourly rates. The kind of place you don't ask questions. I never used the bathrooms there and didn't plan to. It looked like a place where secrets lived. For a few weeks, that spot was my unofficial headquarters. I'd park near the edge of the Wendy's lot, away from the main lighting. I kept a blanket in the back, cracked a window, and set my phone alarm in case a call came through. That's when I started noticing the back room of the motel. Room 8. The blinds were always drawn, but I kept seeing figures moving behind them. A tall man in a hoodie, then someone shorter, pacing. At first, I assumed drugs. Nothing to do with me. Until one humid night in late August, something changed. It was around 2:30 a.m. I was half asleep with the windows open about 2 inches. Crickets chirped loud, and a warm breeze filtered through the van. I just finished a 45-minute drive transporting an elderly man from dialysis. I leaned my seat back and tried to doze off. Then I heard yelling. Startled, I sat up. From room 8, a guy stumbled out into the parking lot, shirtless and barefoot, limping. He looked terrified. He ran like he didn't know where he was going. A few seconds later, a bigger man, maybe 6'3", 250 pounds, charged out after him. He had something in his hand, but from where I sat, I couldn't see what. Could have been a bat. Could have been worse. The smaller guy disappeared into the darkness behind the Wendy's. The big guy stopped halfway across the lot, panting. He turned and stared toward the gas station, then casually walked back inside room 8 and shut the door. I told myself, not my business. I didn't have time to be a hero. I was in a company van, on the clock. But my gut felt sour. That wasn't just a drug fight. That was fear. And something about the big guy's stare felt calculated, like he wanted to see who was watching. Later that night, I got a pickup call from the other side of town. I drove out, completed the trip, then another. It wasn't until around 3 a.m. that I had a long enough break to return to my usual parking spot. When I pulled into the Wendy's lot, something was different. The area where I always parked had large, sharp gravel spread everywhere. Fish-sized rocks scattered across the concrete like someone dumped them intentionally. The lot had always been clean. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe a landscaping truck broke down, but something about the placement felt off, like it was meant to block me. so I parked a few spaces down and tried to sleep. That lasted 20 minutes. Suddenly, headlights flared into my van, blinding. Someone had pulled up directly in front of me and laid on the horn. Long, shrill. Then came the high beams, then the engine revving. Over and over, like someone was taunting me. Heart pounding, I sat up, blinked, and threw my hand on the gear shift. My first instinct was to storm out and yell, but something stopped me. I couldn't see the driver. The lights were too bright. So I stared. I kept my hands on the wheel, eyes locked forward. The van idled, humming, and after maybe 30 seconds, the other car peeled off and vanished down the road. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I parked near the semis instead, kept the doors locked, kept the pepper spray in my hand. Weeks passed. I stuck to the truck side of the lot, avoided room 8 like it had a virus. Nothing else happened. I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whoever had tried to scare me thought I'd gotten the message. Then came that Sunday night. 12-hour shift. I'd skipped dinner to beat traffic and spent the first 6 hours ferrying clients non-stop. No break, no food. By 1:30 a.m., I finally got a return to home zone notification, meaning I was free to park and rest until another trip came through. Taylor had packed me leftover pasta and garlic bread. I was starving. I pulled into the far end of the truck stop. Quiet, almost empty. Parked between two trailers. It was dark, but calm. I locked the passenger door, climbed into the back, and unzipped the foil-wrapped food. I wanted to watch something to distract myself, so I sat sideways with my back against the driver's side door, scrolling Netflix. While shifting around, my elbow hit the lock button on the door. Click. Didn't think twice, until I heard another click, clack, from the outside, right behind me. I froze. The driver's side handle jiggled, once, then again. I turned slowly. Through the cracked side window, I saw a shadow, a man crouching. He ducked, then laid down, crawling beneath the van like some horror movie predator. I could see something in his right hand. Long, shiny. A knife. No doubt. My blood went cold. Every part of my brain screamed, "Don't move." I scrambled to the front seat, quietly as possible, locked the other doors, and turned on the engine. My fingers were shaking so badly I dropped the key fob once. I hit the van's floodlights and slammed the brakes hard enough to make the whole chassis jolt. Underneath, something shifted. I saw him, crawling fast from under the van, sprinting toward the wooded area behind the Wendy's. I didn't follow. I didn't call out. I just sat there, breathing like I'd run a mile, staring out at the trees. I never parked there again. From that night on, I chose a 24-hour grocery store lot farther into town. Better lighting, more cameras, real people. I never saw the man again, but for weeks, I kept checking under the van before every trip. My boss asked once why I was behind schedule, and I lied, said traffic. I never told Ron or Taylor. Not the full story anyway. Who would believe it? But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, I still hear the clack of that handle. Still feel the press of that knife in the air. Still remember the way he crawled, like he'd done it before. And I know, he probably has. I didn't mind the quiet. That's what I always told people when they asked how I handled the night shift at a fast food place, especially one in an off-season beach town. To me, silence meant safety. Fewer customers, fewer problems. But I was wrong. The night the silence broke was the night I realized some horrors don't come with a warning. Back then, I was working at a Wendy's in the town of Eden Falls, South Carolina. A sleepy coastal town that thrived from April to August when tourists poured in to bake on the beach and order greasy food after a sunburned day. But after Labor Day, the streets emptied out. The shops closed early. The only folks sticking around were locals. A few snowbirds, retirees who came down for the warm winters, and, well, the others. You know the type. People drifting from one cheap motel to another. Folks who didn't ask for ketchup or napkins. People who stared too long, paid in crumpled bills, and didn't always leave alone. I was 25 then, broke and trying to save enough to get out of Eden Falls for good. Working nights at Wendy's seemed harmless enough. A paycheck was a paycheck. The closing shift ran from midnight to 6 a.m. I usually worked at Solo inside, while a manager named Rob handled the drive-thru until 3 a.m., after which I locked the lobby doors and cleaned. I wasn't entirely alone. My friend Jackson worked late-night maintenance at a few places owned by the same franchise company. Sometimes after his shift he'd swing by, and we'd eat and talk while I mopped and stocked for the morning crew. It was our little ritual. That night started like any other. I clocked in just before midnight, threw on my visor, tied my apron, and got to work cleaning the front counter. Jackson showed up around 12:30 a.m., exhausted and in his usual oil-stained jeans. "Dude, I'm starving," he said, dropping into the booth near the window. "I got you," I replied. "Spicy chicken and fries?" "Always." I rang it up and slid it to the kitchen monitor, then leaned over the counter. "Can you pick it up? I left my wallet in the office." Jackson grinned, grabbed his keys, and headed out the front door. We kept the doors unlocked until 1 a.m. to serve the last of the bar traffic. A couple minutes passed. I was about to go into the office when I heard the front door chime. I turned back toward the lobby, assuming Jackson had forgotten something, but instead, I saw him fall. It wasn't like in the movies. No dramatic slow motion, no warning shout. He just crumpled like his legs stopped working right in front of the counter. Before I could move, someone else appeared. A man, white, medium build, maybe late 30s, stepped into view from the side door near the restrooms. He wore a gray hoodie with the hood up and dark jeans. And in his hand, he held a short, rusted steel pipe. My brain didn't react fast enough. I just froze. That's when he hit me. The first blow landed just above my left eyebrow. It didn't feel like pain at first, more like a white flash, followed by confusion. I dropped to one knee, trying to make sense of what just happened. I saw blood drip onto the tile. Then he hit me again, and again. I heard something crack. A high-pitched ringing started in my ears. "Andrew got away, man. He flagged down a cop," another voice shouted. I didn't know where it came from. That must have been the other guy, his partner. The man with the pipe swore loudly, turned, and ran for the door. I think I was trying to speak, maybe to yell for help, but nothing came out. I remember crawling behind the counter, trying to find the phone. I was shaking so bad I dropped the receiver twice. When I finally got a dial tone, I slammed the button, screaming at the operator that I'd been attacked, bleeding, maybe dying. I told them not to knock. I'd only unlock the doors when I saw flashing lights. 10 minutes later, the parking lot was full of sirens. The ambulance came first, then the cops. I remember the EMT asking me to sit still, but I couldn't stop trembling. They cut off my shirt to check for other injuries. I kept asking about Jackson. "Your friend's okay," one officer said. "He flagged us down just up the road. Got lucky." It wasn't until I was in the ER that I realized how lucky. The nurse stapled my head, 10 in total, while a cop asked me if I remembered how many times I was hit. "Just once or twice, I think," I whispered. He exchanged a glance with the other officer. "We reviewed the security footage," he said. "It was 10. You tried to grab the pipe and get up, but he kept hitting you. You don't remember any of that?" I shook my head. "Nothing. Just the first hit." Then the world went blank. They never caught them. The footage wasn't clear enough. The men had hoodies pulled tight. No license plate on the car they arrived in, probably stolen. The police assumed it was a failed robbery. Maybe they panicked when Jackson escaped, or maybe it was something else. I had my suspicions. A few weeks before, I'd kicked out a couple from the dining room who were nodding off at the booth. They'd cursed at me, claimed I had no idea who I was messing with. I'd also reported some shady activity behind the building a month prior. Someone cooking meth in the alley based on the smell and the leftover foil and bottles. The cops didn't make an arrest, but maybe someone thought I had. After I got out of the hospital, I tried to go back. For 2 weeks, I came in for my shift and did my best to pretend like things were normal. But every time a car pulled into the lot, my heart jumped into my throat. Every time someone stepped through the door, I flinched. I'd find excuses to hide in the back. The fryer timer would ding and I'd nearly scream. Eventually, I gave my notice. Rob didn't blame me. He said he would have quit too. I found another job, daytime hours, less money, but I could sleep at night without nightmares of footsteps on tile and the feel of cold steel on my face. Sometimes I wonder what they were planning. Maybe it was just robbery. Maybe it was revenge. Or maybe, worst of all, it was random. I try not to think about it, but late at night when I pass a closed fast food place with lights off and doors locked, I still feel a knot in my stomach. People think fast food is easy work. But working the night shift, alone, with nothing but a mop, a till, and a set of keys, it teaches you a different truth. Sometimes the worst things happen when the world is supposed to be asleep. And not every story ends with the bad guys getting caught.